Hello guys, in today's video we're going to be covering 20 facts boomers and Gen Xers miss that the younger generations might never believe. Before every household had their own private phone line, many people had to share their phone connection with neighbors on something called a party line. Imagine trying to make a call only to pick up and hear your neighbor chatting away with someone else. You'd have to wait until they were done before you could use the phone, and in some cases, you could even hear the entire conversation on the other line. Television wasn't always a 24/7 affair. Back in the day, TV stations used to sign off for the night, usually around midnight. After the final show or movie, the screen would display the American flag waving, sometimes playing the national anthem, followed by a test pattern or simply static. There were no late night returns or infomercials, just a signal that it was time for bed. Remember when gas was cheap? During the 50s and 60s, gas could be as low as 25 to 50 cents per gallon. But it wasn't just about the price. Most gas stations were full service. An attendant would come out to pump your gas, clean your windshield, check your oil, and sometimes even top off your tires, all while you stayed in your car. Before the internet, if you wanted to learn something, you had to go to the library. You'd browse through card catalogs, encyclopedias, or ask the librarian for help. Research took time, and you couldn't just Google an answer in seconds. The Dewey Decimal System was your search engine, and instead of bookmarking a page, you'd make notes by hand or photocopy pages. Fresh milk was delivered right to your doorstep in glass bottles by the milkman. You'd leave the empty bottles out and he'd replace them with new ones. It was like a subscription service before such things even existed. Some households even had a special metal milk box outside their doors to keep the milk cool. If you wanted to shop from home, the Sears catalog was your go-to. It was a massive book, full of everything from clothes to furniture to toys. People would spend hours flipping through its pages, circling what they wanted to order, especially around Christmas. You'd fill out an order form, mail it in, and wait for your package to arrive, which at most times took a couple weeks. Before streaming and even before VCRs, if you wanted to see a movie, you often headed to the drive-in theater. It was definitely the perfect outing. You'd pull up in your car, turn your radio to the right frequency, and watch the movie on a giant outdoor screen. It was a mix of movie watching and socializing. Some people even snuck their friends in by hiding them in the trunk. Today, we take pictures with our phones and see them instantly. But back then, if you wanted instant photos, you needed a Polaroid camera. You'd snap a picture and the camera would spit out a blank photo that would gradually develop over a few minutes. And yes, everyone shook the photo, even though it didn't actually speed up the process. Before computers became household staples, people used typewriters to write letters, reports, and even books. Typing was a skill. Mistakes meant using whiteout or starting over. The keys made a satisfying clack-clack sound, and you had to manually move to the next line after each row of text. Tang, that famous orange powder drink mix, was made famous by NASA. Astronauts drank it during their space missions, and because of that, it became a household name. There were also space food sticks, which were kind of like early protein bars, but it's just another example of how some things were ahead of their time. Before the color TV became mainstream, many homes had black and white televisions. And here's another shocker. There were only a few channels to choose from. There was nothing available for you to endlessly scroll through or flip back to. But even with just a handful of channels, shows like I Love Lucy and The Twilight Zone captured everyone's imagination. Before CDs, MP3s, and streaming, people listened to music on vinyl records. Each record had two sides, so you had to flip it halfway through. And the soft crackling sound when the needle hit the record, that was the sound of the anticipation. Music wasn't just something you listened to in the background, it was an experience. Before cassette tapes, we had 8-track tapes. They were big and clunky, but allowed you to listen to full albums on the go, especially in cars. The downside, they would sometimes switch tracks in the middle of a song. Still, they were a big deal in the 60s and 70s. In school, penmanship was taken very seriously, and you couldn't just type things out. You had to learn how to write in cursive, which was considered an essential skill. Some schools even graded you on your handwriting. It was a big part of the education system before computers took over. Before Walkmans and iPods, the transistor radio was how people listened to music and news on the go. These portable devices allowed you to tune into your favorite AM or FM stations wherever you were. Whether you were at the beach, in the park, or just walking around, your transistor radio was always by your side. For those who grew up during the Cold War, the constant threat of nuclear war was a real and ever-present fear. People did duck and cover drills in schools, and many families even built bomb shelters in their backyards, hoping they would never have to use them. Soda used to come in glass bottles, and there was something special about the crisp, cold taste of a Coke or Pepsi straight from the glass. You'd return the empty bottles to the store to get a deposit back, creating a kind of early recycling system. Flying used to be a luxury experience. People dressed up to fly, and meals were served with real silverware and glass plates. There was no squeezing into tiny seats or long security lines. Air travel in the 50s and 60s and even 70s was something to look forward to, not just a means of getting from point A to B. Can you imagine riding in a car with no seatbelt? Well, until the late 60s, many cars didn't even come with seatbelts, and even when they did, not everyone used them. It wasn't until the 80s that wearing a seatbelt became mandatory in most places. Before everyone had a cell phone in their pocket, people relied on payphones when they were out and about. If you need to make a call, you'd find the nearest phone booth, drop in a few coins, and dial. You always hoped the person picked up because if they didn't, you were out of luck and out of change. Before cable TV and satellite dishes, most households had TV antennas, often called rabbit ears, perched on top of their TV sets. Getting a clear picture sometimes felt like a game of trial and error. You'd move the antenna around, maybe wrap it up in aluminum foil, and hope for the best. Long before GPS and Google Maps, people relied on paper maps to find their way. If you were going on a road trip, you'd unfold a giant map, often taking up half the car's dashboard, and plot your route. Of course, refolding it was another story. No one ever got that thing right. Back in the day, people took photos using film cameras, and you wouldn't know if the shot was any good until you developed the film. It could take days or even weeks before you saw your photos. You drop the roll off at the photo shop, then eagerly wait for them to be processed, silently hoping you didn't ruin the whole roll with your thumb over the lens. Hey, thanks a lot for sticking around to the end of the video. If you want me to talk about anything else or any other topics, join the Discord down below, and I'll see you next time.